The boxes are still sitting in the corner of my daughter's room when I get home from my shift. Not her room anymore, I should say. That's the part I keep tripping over. Standing in the doorway at 11 o'clock at night with my scrubs still on and my feet aching, and a cold cup of coffee in my hand that I forgot to drink 3 hours ago. My daughter's bookshelf, the one she picked out herself at the thrift store last spring, the one she painted yellow with little white stars, is gone. Her purple curtains are gone. The glow-in-the-dark constellation stickers she spent a whole Saturday afternoon pressing onto the ceiling, gone. In their place, a white crib with a mobile of little felt elephants spinning slowly in the draft from the vent, a changing table, a rocking chair that I have never seen before in my life. My daughter's room has been converted into a nursery. While I was at work, without a single word to me, I stand there for a long time, long enough that the hallway light clicks off on its automatic timer, and I'm left in the dark with just the glow of that little elephant mobile, watching it turn. Let me back up, because if I start in the middle, you'll think I'm exaggerating. People always think you're exaggerating when the story sounds like this. My name is Rachel. I'm 31 years old. I work as a physical therapist at a rehabilitation center. I've been there 6 years. I'm good at my job, and I make a decent living. Decent enough that when my marriage fell apart 2 years ago, I could have figured something out on my own. I want to be clear about that. The reason I moved back into my parents' house was not because I had no options. The reason was my daughter. My daughter Ivy is 8 years old. She has juvenile idiopathic arthritis, which is exactly as hard to manage as it sounds. She has flares. She has bad weeks where she can't open her hands in the morning, and I have to sit with her for 20 minutes doing warm water exercises before she can hold her spoon. She sees a pediatric rheumatologist. She takes medication that requires monitoring. And when I was going through the divorce and trying to figure out where we were going to land, my mother sat across from me at her kitchen table and said, "Come here. Just come here while you get back on your feet. I'll be home when Ivy gets off the bus. I'll be there for the bad mornings." So I came. I paid them $800 a month in rent. I insisted on that. My parents said it wasn't necessary, but I insisted. I covered all of our groceries. I handled most of the cooking during the week because my schedule meant I got home in the early evening, and my parents are in their 60s and tired. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself 6 months, maybe a year, long enough to build my savings back up and find a good place in a good school district. I had a plan. What I didn't plan for was my brother. My brother Derek is 28. He is the youngest in our family by 4 years, and he has been the youngest in the way that only youngest children in certain families can be coddled, excused, orbited around. When he got his girlfriend Mara pregnant, my parents reacted the way I had learned to expect them to react to anything Derek did, with complete and immediate mobilization. They offered their home before he even asked. They converted the guest room into a proper bedroom for him and Mara. They talked about the baby the way people talk about a second coming. I told myself it would be fine. There was room. Ivy and I had our 2 rooms, her bedroom and mine, and Derek and Mara took the guest room, and my parents were over the moon, and I told myself it would be fine. The baby came in February. A boy. They named him Carter. And that's when everything shifted in a way I can only describe as tectonic, slow, and invisible, until suddenly the ground is somewhere it wasn't before. My parents had always been warm with Ivy. They loved her. I believed that. But in the months after Carter arrived, I started noticing the way the warmth redistributed itself, the way my mother's voice changed when she picked up Carter versus when she called Ivy for dinner, the way my father bought Carter a bouncer, a playmat, a little basketball hoop for his doorway, all within the first 3 months. And the gift he got Ivy for her birthday that year was a $20 gift card to a bookstore with a sticky note that said, "Pick something good," which was fine. It was thoughtful, but it was also a notable contrast to the shopping spree that had apparently occurred for Carter's nursery before the child was even born. I noticed. I filed it away. I told myself I was being oversensitive. I was going through a lot. I was probably reading into things. Then I came home on a Tuesday night to find my daughter's room converted into a nursery, and I stopped telling myself I was reading into things. Ivy was asleep in my room. I could see that from the hallway. My bedroom door was open. She was curled in my bed with her stuffed rabbit, which meant my parents had put her there when they realized she had nowhere to sleep. I checked on her first before I did anything else. I stood in the doorway watching her breathe for a minute, the way I used to do when she was a baby, and I was still learning what it felt like to be responsible for another person's entire existence. Then I went downstairs. My parents were watching television in the living room. My mother looked up when I came in. My father kept his eyes on the screen for a moment before he turned. "We wanted to talk to you about that," my mother said, before I said anything. "About the fact that my daughter's room is gone?" "It's not gone. Her bookshelf is gone. Her curtains, her ceiling stickers. Where is all of that?" "It's in the basement storage," my father said. "It's perfectly safe." I looked at him for a long moment. "You put my daughter's room in the basement. And you put her where? In my bed?" "Just for tonight," my mother said. She had that particular tone she gets, the one that is meant to communicate reasonableness, the one that says we are all adults here and we can discuss this calmly. "We needed to finish the nursery before Carter comes home from Mara's parents this weekend, and we were going to talk to you about a longer-term arrangement." "What arrangement?" My parents exchanged a look. I have been watching my parents exchange looks my entire life. I know what this one means. "Ivy's room is the biggest room on that side of the hall," my father said. "And Carter needs space, the crib, the changing table, room to grow. Derek and Mara's room is already smaller than ideal. So the solution is to take Ivy's room. We thought," my mother said carefully, "that Ivy could move downstairs. The basement is finished. There's a bedroom down there. It has its own bathroom." "The basement has a moisture problem," I said. "You've been saying for 2 years that you need to deal with the moisture problem. It's not that bad." "Mom." I stopped. I breathed. "Ivy has a chronic inflammatory condition. Her rheumatologist has specifically told us to keep her away from environments with dampness or mold. That's a medical fact. You have been to her appointments. You know this." Silence. "It's not mold," my father said. "It's just a little." "It's a little what?" "A little moisture. In a basement, where you want my sick 8-year-old to sleep." My mother stood up. I think she thought that standing would make this feel more like a conversation and less like what it was. "Rachel, we know you've been going through a hard time. We want to be here for you and for Ivy, but we also have to think about the whole family. I am part of the whole family." "Of course you are. And Ivy is part of the whole family." "Yes. So when you say you're thinking about the whole family, what you mean is that you're thinking about Carter." Another look. A longer one this time. "Carter is a newborn," my father said. "He has different needs. And Ivy has been here for 8 years. Ivy is my daughter and your granddaughter, and she has slept in that room for the past 14 months. She painted that bookshelf herself. She put those stars on the ceiling. I stopped again, because my throat was doing something inconvenient, and I was not going to cry in front of them. Not tonight. And you didn't even tell me. You just did it. While I was at work, my mother started to say something about how they thought it would be easier, how they thought I would understand once I saw the nursery finished, how Carter really did need the space. I stopped listening. I was looking at the family photographs on the mantle, the row of frames that has lived there my entire life, and I was doing a very quiet calculation. I went to bed. I curled around my daughter in my narrow bed, and I lay there looking at the ceiling, and I did what I have learned to do in the middle of the night when the feelings are too large. I made a list. The list had one item on it. Call Maya. Maya is my colleague at the rehab center. She's been my closest friend there for 3 years. She lives in a 2-bedroom apartment, and she has mentioned more than once in the past year that she has been thinking about getting a roommate to split costs. We had joked about it, sort of. The way you joke about things that feel slightly too real to say directly. I texted her at 6 a.m., before Ivy woke up. I said, "I know this is out of nowhere, but are you still thinking about a roommate? I need somewhere to go." She called me back in 7 minutes. "How soon?" she said. "Is this week too soon?" There was a brief pause. "My second bedroom has a bed and a dresser already. Ivy can have it. I'll sleep on the couch in the office until we figure out the longer-term plan. I'll pay you the same rent I'm paying here. More. If, Rachel. Just come." I sat with the phone against my cheek for a moment. Outside my bedroom window, the neighborhood was still gray with early morning. Ivy was awake now, sitting up beside me with her rabbit, watching me with the steady brown eyes she's had since she was born. "Who was that?" she asked. "Maya," I said. "You remember Maya. She has the dog. Biscuit," Ivy said. "Biscuit. She says we can come stay with her for a while." Ivy considered this. She pulled at one of her rabbit's ears. "Is it because of my room?" I looked at her. 8 years old, with her hair going in 17 directions and a rabbit tucked under her arm, and she understood. Children always understand more than we think they do. "Yes," I said. We're going to find somewhere better, somewhere just ours. She nodded like this was a reasonable thing to hear at 6 in the morning. Can we take the yellow bookshelf? We are absolutely taking the yellow bookshelf. We were out of the house by Friday. I want to be very specific about this, because I know how these stories usually go, and I was determined that this one would not go that way. I have heard too many stories about women who waited, who convinced themselves that they needed just another few weeks, another paycheck, another conversation with their parents that might finally change something. I have been one of those women before, in other circumstances, and I know what waiting costs. So, we were out by Friday. I took a personal day on Thursday. While Ivy was at school, I went to the basement and brought up the bookshelf, the curtains, the box of ceiling stickers. I washed and packed everything that was ours in the most systematic 4 hours of my life. My mother came downstairs around noon and watched me fold Ivy's sweaters. You don't have to do this, she said. I know I don't have to, I said. I'm choosing to. Where are you going? Maya's, for now, and then I'm going to find our own place. I looked up at her. I have a good job, Mom. I have always had a good job. I can take care of us. I thought being here was good for Ivy. I thought family meant something. My mother's face moved through several expressions. I watched her settle on the one that was going to be least useful to either of us. We are family, she said. We're not asking you to leave. I know. I'm choosing to leave. I went back to folding. I need you to understand the difference. She left. I finished packing. When Ivy got off the bus, I had everything in my car and one overnight bag ready for her. I told her she could say goodbye to Grandma and Grandpa if she wanted to. She went inside. She was in there for about 10 minutes, and when she came out, she looked composed, in that particular 8-year-old way that is actually more heartbreaking than tears. Grandma cried, she said. I know. I told her she could call me. She looked at me sideways, checking. Is that okay? Of course that's okay, I said. I'm not trying to take them away from you. I just needed to take you somewhere better. We drove to Maya's with the back seat full of boxes and the yellow bookshelf strapped to the roof of my car. Ivy held biscuit the whole evening while Maya and I drank wine at the kitchen table and made plans. 3 weeks later, I had an apartment. It is a 2-bedroom in a building with good light and a park 2 blocks away. The second bedroom has a window seat, which Ivy identified immediately as the primary factor in her room's superiority to any room she had ever previously occupied. She spent the first weekend arranging her books on the yellow shelf with a focus and determination that made me want to cry in the best possible way. She put the glow-in-the-dark stars back on the ceiling, in a different pattern this time, one she designed herself from a photograph of the actual night sky above our city. I paid first, last, and security deposit without anyone's help. I want you to know that. Not because I need credit for it, I don't need credit for being a functional adult, but because I want the record to reflect that the story my parents seemed to have constructed, the one where I was fragile and needed managing and couldn't make decisions without their input, was not accurate. It was never accurate. I just made the mistake of believing, for a while, that proximity to family was worth something it turned out not to be worth. My brother called, about a month after we moved out. Derek, which surprised me. Derek is not generally someone who initiates difficult conversations. He said Mara felt bad about what happened and wanted me to know that. I thanked him for calling. I told him I didn't blame Mara, that Mara had not been the one who moved my daughter's things into a basement without telling me, and that I hoped they were all doing well with the baby. He said Carter was great. I said I was glad. It was a short call, and it was fine. My mother calls more often, twice a week, usually. The calls follow a pattern. She asks about Ivy. I tell her how Ivy is doing. She says she misses us. I say we're doing well. Sometimes she edges toward the thing we're not saying, the conversation sitting underneath every other conversation, and when she does, I let her edge toward it, but I don't pull her in. I have learned to wait. Rasting way. I have learned that certain things cannot be resolved and can only be navigated. Ivy's rheumatologist says her markers look better than they have in a year. Something about the new apartment, the better sleep, the reduced stress load that apparently even an 8-year-old carries, whether she's aware of it or not. I think about the basement, the moisture, my daughter's lungs, her joints, her little body that has already worked so much harder than it should have to work. I think about those things and I feel something that I can only describe as the opposite of regret. She is thriving. That's what I keep coming back to. Ivy is thriving. She started a reading challenge at the library, and she's winning. She made 2 new friends in the building. A pair of sisters on the 3rd floor who knock on our door on Saturday mornings to ask if she can come to the park. She fell asleep on my shoulder last Tuesday watching a movie, and I sat there with her hair against my cheek and I thought, this is the life I was supposed to be building. Not the one where I was shrinking and rearranging and waiting to take up less space. This one. I'm telling you this part because the story doesn't end where you might expect it to. 2 Sundays ago, I heard a knock at my apartment door at 11 in the morning. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and saw my father. He was standing in the hallway, looking old in a way he hadn't looked before, or maybe in a way I hadn't let myself see. He had a paper bag with him. He had the expression of a man who has spent a long time preparing a speech and is no longer certain of the first sentence. I opened the door. I should have called, he said. Yes, I said. Can I? He gestured, vaguely, meaning, may I come in? I looked at him for a moment. Behind me, I could hear the television. Some cartoon Ivy was watching. The apartment smelled like the pancakes I'd made that morning. My father stood in my hallway looking at his own hands. Ivy's here, I said. I know. I was hoping to see her. If that's... He stopped. I was hoping to see both of you. I stepped back and let him in. He sat at my kitchen table, and Ivy came in and her face did the thing that children's faces do when they are genuinely happy about something, that complete, unguarded light. She hugged him. He held her tightly in the way of someone who understands, finally, that they have been careless with something that mattered. I watched them from the kitchen doorway, and I let myself feel all of it at once, the grief and the anger and the love, which have never been separate things and probably never will be. He pulled a book out of the paper bag. Ivy had mentioned to my mother, on one of their calls, that she was looking for the 3rd book in a series she was reading. He had found it at a bookstore. He held it out to her like it was fragile. She took it with both hands and said thank you, Grandpa, with the sincerity that is the exclusive property of 8-year-olds. And then she went back to her cartoons with the book pressed against her chest. My father and I sat across from each other at my kitchen table. I didn't handle it well, he said. It seemed to take some effort. No, I said. You didn't. Your mother and I, we got caught up. The baby. Derek needing. He stopped. Tried again. That's not an explanation. I know it's not. It's not, I agreed. You made Ivy feel like she mattered less. She was 8 years old and she was already dealing with her health and the divorce. And you made her feel like she mattered less than a baby who hadn't even moved in yet. I don't think you meant to. But that's what happened. He was quiet for a long time. Outside, the sound of the park, children in the distance. She seems happy, he said finally, looking around the apartment. At the bookshelf visible through the doorway, the yellow paint, the white stars. She is, I said. We both are. He nodded slowly. He had more things he wanted to say, I could tell. Some of them might have been things worth hearing, but I had learned, over the past few months, that I didn't have to receive everything all at once, that I could take things at a pace that worked for me and my daughter, that a door left open is not the same thing as a door left unguarded. You're welcome to visit, I told him. I want Ivy to have her grandparents, but you should call first, and some things are going to need to be different. He said he understood. I don't know yet what different will look like. I don't know how much repair is possible, or what shape the relationship will take when we find our way to some new version of it. I know that Ivy knows her grandfather drove across the city to bring her a book. I know that matters to her. I know I'm not going to take that away from her. What I'm not going to do is go back to pretending. I am not going to sit in a house where my daughter sleeps in a damp basement so that someone else's baby can have the better room. I am not going to fold myself small enough to fit into the space that's left after everyone else is taken care of. I am not going to wait for permission to take my daughter somewhere she can breathe. I did that for 14 months. And then I stopped. My father stayed for about an hour. He had coffee. Ivy showed him the star map she'd made, and explained the constellations with the confidence of someone who has done considerable research. He listened to all of it. When he left, Ivy stood at the window and watched him walk to his car. Then she turned to me with her rabbit under her arm. Is Grandpa going to come back? She asked. If he calls ahead and we're free, I said. Yes. She thought about this. She nodded. Okay, she said. And then she went back to her book. I stood at the window for another minute after she left the room, watching the street, the park at the end of the block, the late morning light on all of it. Thinking about what it costs to leave and what it costs to stay, and how the math of those things is different than anyone tells you it will be when you're young. Thinking about my daughter in the next room, thriving. Thinking about the yellow bookshelf and the stars on the ceiling, and how much it turns out you can carry when you have to. My phone buzzed. Maya, asking if Ivy wanted to come over for dinner and watch a movie with her and Biscuit. I knocked on Ivy's doorframe. Movie night at Maya's? She looked up from her book. She considered. She looked at Biscuit, her stuffed rabbit, as though consulting him. Can I bring my book? You can always bring your book. Then yes, she said. We put our shoes on and walked out into the afternoon, and the door of our apartment closed solidly behind us, our apartment, ours, and I did not look back.